Welcome, and I'm going to be talking about some upcoming changes to Standard that we have in the MTG world. With the new set about to come out, there's a bunch of cards that possibly need to be banned or are just going to make the game unplayable, unfun, maybe even broken with some of them. There's currently one card banned, and we're also going to talk about that possibly getting unbanned. So, if you like what you see here, please sit back, relax, and enjoy. So, first thing first, of course, Nexus of Fate is my number one card that I want to see out of this game. This card was a mistake when it was printed. It should have never made its way from the box as a buy-a-box promo only to Standard play. Because this card does not exile itself or you get rid of it in one way or another, you literally have to be playing blue with one of two counter spells to deal with this card. You either need to be playing currently Syncopate or Devious Cover Up. This card makes some decks so unviably playable that it becomes a game of solitaire. And I tell you now, if I was playing anyone in real life instead of just on Arena, I would probably scoop my cards immediately and walk away from the person and tell them I'd never play them again. This card causes so much frustration, it needs to go the way of the dinosaurs. Just like we've brought them back in Ixalan. Next card on the list, obviously, is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. I don't have a huge issue with this, but I know a lot of people talk about this card and they strongly believe it's too powerful. The number one loyalty ability that Teferi does hold is extremely powerful, and going into the new set, there is an enchantment that's in there that's going to untap all your lands. But for a +1, you get to draw a card, and at the beginning of the next untap step, untap 2 lands. That is way too powerful for the current Standard meta, and that alone puts it into the pile of it should be gone. You know, if it was a +1, just draw a card, no one would have a problem with it. But the fact that it untaps 2 lands at the end of your turn makes it very, very, very toxic. There is people that are using Nexus and Fate with conjunction with Teferi, and those 2 extra lands, they will untap, and before your opponent's next turn, because Instant of Fate is an instant, now that they have the 7 mana, because they've gotten 2 back, they use Nexus of Fate then. And then they cast it, and then you don't get your turn, it just goes into this loop. And once that loop starts going, then you get his emblem out and your game is over. There's nothing left that you can do. But people are even running this without a real win con, or where the win con is to make sure that you get decked at the end of your loop cycle. It just does not bode very well for the game. This card is my number 2 on my list that I believe need to be seen the Banhammer in the upcoming release. Carnage Tyrant. I absolutely love this card because it does shut down most control decks. There are a lot of people that believe this is too powerful in effect. Because it can't be countered and because it has hexproof, yes. At a 6 mana cost, it is quite powerful. It is a mythic. But the fact that it can't get much, you can't hit it with much or remove it properly, makes it very difficult. And there's the new creature that targets lands. So the one card that you could be running 1 or 2 of, now you'd have to run 4 just to make sure that they don't get destroyed. That being Deflection Tower, or Detection Tower. Because it takes away the hexproof, so you can target this card. If there was more cards out there that would take away that hexproof, it would be nice. If maybe it was the first spell that goes at this gets countered or something, then it would be nice. But hexproof as a mechanic is almost too powerful as is. When those cards cannot be countered as they come into play, makes it double hard to get rid of. Now, you know, if it was simply you cast 2 removal spells to get rid of this thing, then fine. That's fine. We've seen that in the past with a lot of things where it knocks down, where the first spell knocks down this sort of hexproof shield, the second spell gets rid of it. Next on my list is Goblin Chainwhirler. This is another card that a lot of people have a problem with. In most red decks, anything that's running red currently, that's mostly straight red or red, maybe white or something else. Because this is a 3 red, it does cause kind of a mana issue to cast it. But the fact that it does 1 damage across the board, if you're playing against Selesnya tokens or some sort of token deck, this pretty much wipes out that entire board. This card on its own, doing that extra 1 point of damage, isn't so bad, but now when they bounce this with First Strike on top of that 1 damage across the board, it makes it a viable target. I know this has been looked at for quite a while as one of the main problems in the Red Rush deck before the rotation happened, and this card has still seen a presence in Standard. I believe it may get hit, but I don't think so. I don't think anything's going to get hit on this card. I think it's here to stay, and I think it's something that we got to deal with. It does only have a toughness of 3, so it does die to a lightning strike. There is multiple ways to get rid of this card. It does not have hexproof. I don't see this thing going away anytime soon. Next is the one card we have banned in Standard. If you didn't know, if you're a returning player to the game, you may not have known that this card is actually banned right now from the Standard meta. I know recently on Arena we have the Rivals of Ixalan draft going, and this card does show up every once in a while through that draft where it is playable in the limited environment. I believe this card should be unbanned. There is going to be call for it to be unbanned because the life gain is already heavy in the game, and this can shut down a life gain deck. When you have the Cats and the Wild Growth Walker going along, and they're easy to bring out because they're a small casting cost or a weenie style deck, this card can shut that down pretty quick. This card, though, on the other side, maybe needs to still be banned because if you go up against Selesnya tokens or some sort of token deck, you're gonna die instantly because this thing's going to deal 1 point of damage to that creature's controller. For 3, this card is pretty powerful for it being a 3/3 menace, 3 casting cost, and players can't gain life. It's almost costed too low for what it does, and that might be why we still see it in the banned pile. Niv Mizzet. When this thing hits the board, you're already playing a deck where there's a lot of card draw and a lot of instant sorceries that are going off again and again and again. So the extra 1 point of damage quickly adds up. I've gone myself from about a 28 life total to dead in 1 round from this hitting the board, just because of the package that surrounds this card. This card wouldn't be so bad if it didn't get paired with Teferi, or if it didn't get paired with Nexus or Crackling Drake, but it ends up in the pile where a bunch of these cards together makes this card even worse. So will this get a ban hammer? I don't think so, because we are going into the other 5 guilds. there might be more that manipulates this and shut it down. This card is actually very humorous to play against, especially if you have Eldest Reborn or a way to steal it out of someone's graveyard, because now you have it on your opponent's side. So it does create some very hilarious scenarios within the game. So this is one of those other cards that I think should stick around for the time being, but we may see in the future where something needs to be done with this card. Impervious Great Worm. This is another one of those buy a box promos. It hasn't made huge splashes, but this, I brought it in here because it's a 16/16 indestructible card. Once again, you cannot get this in the set. You have to buy, and you had to have bought a box to get this, and it was only printed in foil. Because it's Convoke and indestructible, this could easily be run into a green deck that makes a lot of tokens, maybe a Southwering deck or the Selesnya style decks. And this then becomes a headache because now you have to exile it to get rid of it. It's one of those cards that a lot of people aren't running because it's very high to cast and it can be removed with them by the exile effects. But this is still a 16/16 indestructible, so be on the radar for this because this may come back in. You may see it. I know in the current Moromir's Madness, you do see this at the 10 cast slot where people will race to get this, and then it becomes a problem in that game because there's no real way to get rid of it unless you get the creatures that bounce things out of play. Steel Leaf Champion. I know I have the Store Championship version here on the screen. This is a card that, in all honesty, was a mistake. It's a 5/4 3 casting green creature, which in itself is not that bad, but Steel Leaf Champion cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. At 3 casting costs, in a ramp color, this is very hard to deal with. If you're playing against someone with this card and it's your turn 4 and it's down, the likelihood of you having something that's going to be effective against this right away is slim to none. It does die to a cast out or walk the plank, but this is a card that just became that it becomes a staple in every green deck right now because of the power level of this card. The fact that it cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, well, now you look at, well, can I reduce my opponent's creatures to less than 2, making this thing completely unblockable? And there is a new Orzhov card coming out, which gives all your opponent's creatures -1/-1. So maybe be on the lookout for a green, white, black deck in the future, because there's other cards that synergize with that, like the Wildgrowth Walker, Find Fatality. You have ways of interacting with your graveyard within green, black, and white now. Ral Izzet Viceroy. This card is not so bad if you're playing against it without Teferi. When you add in white in with the Jeskai colors with this card, and we're getting new white cards, new white-blue cards with Azorius, Ral becomes very powerful and very easy to get into his emblem. I've played against this quite a bit, and usually when I play against him, against the Jeskai control deck, they have both Teferi and him on the board, and I cannot do a thing to get rid of him. I get shut down time and time and time again, and then it's pretty much dead. The other card that usually goes in there that I have a problem with is Fight with Fire. Once they hit 9 mana, the damage for Fight with Fire becomes 10 on you directly, and in those colors you have ways to copy that spell. So now Ral becomes a very highly sought after card, and possibly, will he get the Banhammer? I don't think so. I don't think this one deserves a Banhammer. I think it's just, he fits into that package a little too well currently. His emblem being 4 damage to any target and draw 2 cards. When that emblem gets off, your game is over. Any of these emblems that cause damage when you cast something they're insane. Gyra has that, the old Chandra had that. So there could be a reason for this to go, but I don't think it'll go anytime soon. Prime Speaker Venafar. This is one of the new cards that's been spoiled. There is a lot, and I mean a lot of hype around this card. You tap, sacrifice another creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Now, if you find a way to untap this within the current game where there is the new enchantment in Azorius that does allow to untap, there I believe are other ways to make this untap. You could make this with Phyrexian Sculptures, make this a artifact creature. You untap it that way, but then you don't get to use this because it is a sorcery effect. So there will be cards that will untap or let this untap, and it will become broken at that point, because if you find a way to keep untapping it, now you can search for your sacrifice a creature that's say a 2 cast. So now you look for a 3 cast. You bring in the 3 cast, you untap this, you sacrifice it again. Then you look for a 4 cast, and so on. So then you climb up the chain, because this is something that doesn't go away. This is going to cause problems. This may break the format. I don't know. We haven't seen the entire set yet, but depends on what else comes out with it. Combine Guildmage. This is one that was also just spoiled not too long ago. This is a 2-cast Seismic Merfolk Wizard. Now, important thing here to note, it is the Wizard subtype, so now you can use Wizard's Retort with this in blue. So it does, you do have the counters in there. Once again, if you find a way to tap and untap this, this will become massively insane. With the green to tap, this turn each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it. So just think of this for a second. You maybe have 8 mana, you tap this card, and then you do the Sapphiring Migration. Now you have 4 2/2s that enter the battlefield. With another way to boost it, those that can get right out of control. Now, for the blue side of things, for 2 mana, you tap this, move a 1/1 counter from target creature you control onto another target creature you control. Yes, it piles up the 1/1 counters onto something else. This is something that you could easily do before your turn, because there's no restrictions when you can do this. So this card could be another one that may be problematic in the upcoming standard meta. Growth Spiral. The major problem on this card is that it's instant. Now, you can do this on your opponent's turn, making you ramp on your opponent's turn, which is insane. And it replaces itself for 2 mana. So draw a card, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield at an instant speed. This is going to be seen everywhere. In any deck that runs green and blue, you're going to see this card everywhere. This is going to be a huge mana ramp card for that deck, and now it also replaces itself, so it's going to create havoc. Maldraffa. Because we were in green-blue, it was easy enough to slide in black. This card, when it did see some meta play, it was quite highly effective, and with the new Seismic, this card should be on everyone's radar, because you have a lot of graveyard effects in and out of the graveyard. This may see a rise in the new set, depending on what else we see. This being a 6/6 on its own elemental avatar, during each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card from each permanent type from your graveyard. That includes land, enchantment, creatures, artifacts, and so on. So this is something that you should have on your radar. It should always be on your radar, because this could sneak into a deck that you might not be suspecting. I know this with the Aldous Reborn enchantment does make a bit of a broken combo, because when the Aldous Reborn enchantment hits the graveyard, now you can recast it and put it right back out onto the field. So this is something to be aware of in the upcoming standard. Sleep. This card is very problematic. I almost believe it should get banned. Only because it's not really a fair card. Now, you tap all creatures your target player controls. That's fine. But those creatures don't untap during the player's next untap step, this being a sorcery. So now, you cast this pre-combat. All your opponent's creatures tap. They don't untap on their untap step. So now that player has gotten 2 free attacks on the player, which is very game-ending. And unless you're playing blue where you can counter this, or I think there's maybe 1 or 2 white cards that untap all your creatures, unless you have that as a backup, this card will run you over every time. There is not a very easy way to affect this card and this effect very easily. So to counter this, you have to have the correct cards in your hand, and this creates a problem. And I honestly think this card is too overpowered for what it does, especially when we also have Tempest Caller. It being the same casting cost and you get a 2/3, this is more fair of a card on a creature because it only taps their creatures for that round, which they do allow them untap. So they only get in for that single blow instead of a double blow. And that double blow makes it very, very bad. Sleep in itself, I honestly think, needs to go out of standard. We already have Tempest Caller. It already fits into the Merfolk deck. I think this is a much more fair card, but is not being played because Sleep is vastly superior to the Tempest Caller for the same mana cost. Benethik Druid. This card is going to become insane. If there's some sort of token effect where the 1/1 counters can be removed to lay a land, this card is going to skyrocket up there. This being an uncommon, and it is a legendary creature, it's a 3/3/5 cast. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And so this card with the other one that I spoke of earlier, where it replaces itself, then this will replace another one, and you gain life. So this is one card also to be on the radar in the upcoming standard meta, as I would love to be able to build a deck around this card, but currently there isn't enough of a support package for this card. But with Sismic getting a very good look at in Ravnica Alliance, this may be something that creeps up on people's radar. Wilderness Reclamation. This card is going to break the game if Nexus is not banned. This, combined with Nexus and Teferi, is going to be ridiculous. So at the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. So now, those Nexus players with this card, I can tell you already, there's a lot of hype around this card. Those Nexus players want this card in the Turbofog deck in a heartbeat. So now you have all this land, you're going to be able to do all this stuff during your turn in these very high mana rampy decks. Then at your end step, all your lands on top, you now tap 7 of those lands, cast Nexus, go again. And go again. And go again. It's just not fair of a card if Nexus sticks around. This also being in a green-blue Sismic area, or even a Bant with white included in there. Now you have counters, you have so many things that this is going to enable. This card is going to break the game, and it's high on the list for stuff that's going to be problematic in the new standard meta. And that's all I got for you this Wednesday. I hope that this is informative for people coming into the game that maybe are new to the game, or a returning player, just to catch you up on a little bit of the standard meta currently and what it's about to change into. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will return in the future so I can make more content and have more people joining up on my channel. Anyway, let me know down below. Maybe I missed a card or two. Let me know down below for your picks that I didn't show on here that may become a problematic issue in the upcoming standard meta. Thanks for watching, and have yourselves a great day.